You are listening to an episode of Megan is Not a Parent, But. Today's episode is brought to you by Positive Parenting Class Pass, 6 simple positive parenting classes to kickstart your positive parenting journey. You can start today at bekindcoaching.com/classpass. In today's episode, we will be chatting about the fight trauma response, what it looks like and what it feels like in adaptive and maladaptive ways. The next 4 episodes will be a mini series where we now look at each of the responses that we introduced in last episode and break them down, and you'll start to learn about how you can show up to be a support rather than gasoline in those moments. This series also ties in what behavior is communication, and how we can start to interpret someone's behavior differently and ways to connect to ourselves so that we know how to show up to do our part. So I invite you to get cozy, grab your notebook, and let's dig in. Welcome to Megan is Not a Parent, But, the podcast where I, your host, Megan Ford, former early childhood educator turned positive parenting coach, helps parents just like you learn how to deal with your strong-willed child's difficult behavior. I've been described from my clients as a blend between Brene Brown and Miss Frizzle, you know, the one from the Magic School Bus. I help bring awareness and hold space for the hard conversations and make big concepts like behavior and relationships and temperaments easy to understand and easy to implement. If you're a parent who struggles with your child's loud, dramatic, disruptive, over-the-top behavior, but don't think a parenting coach would help you because those are just for the bad parent or those parents, then this episode is especially for you. I invite you to grab a journal, a cozy blanket, a warm beverage, and enjoy what you're about to explore. All right, in this series on trauma and trauma responses, I have this disclaimer that I'm going to share again now, that I am a parenting coach, and the information in this series is for education and entertainment. It is not a substitution for professional mental health support. If you are looking to step into spaces to help you work through and heal, I invite you to reach out to me and I can connect you with ways to find either therapists or counselors in your area. And of course, if you're looking for parenting support, you can look no further. I am right here. As you're listening to the next few episodes, I encourage you to take care of you, which means if you have to push pause and walk away, please do that. If you need to stop and drink some water, please do that. I always say, let's get cozy before we dig in. And I really mean it, because this can be activating. This can be a lot to take in. And being cozy and safe is my primary goal and my primary wish for you. So we are going to start here, that we are perfectly designed to survive. Just like we talked about last episode, it's our brain's main focus. When we find a threat, we have a response to that threat, so that when we are in the wild and we come across that threat, our brain can make an assumption of how to keep us safe. Those create adaptive strategies, and those adaptive strategies, when left unchecked and unchallenged, can become maladaptive strategies, so that when we are in the wild, we can assume and make interpretations of things that are actually non-threats. So the example that I've been giving throughout this series is, if we meet a tiger, we want to protect ourselves, we want to survive, and then our brain will start making assumptions, so that if we start to see a wild tiger, we will start to protect ourselves. But then what happens if that tiger is actually a house cat? And our brain is making those assumptions in perceiving a threat where there is not a real threat. Sometimes this is to help keep us alive and safe, and other times it can start to become maladaptive and start to hinder and limit our growth. And that's because when our brain is perceiving those threats, it activates a defense response. And the work that we do here, and the work that I do with parents, is to remove punishments and to remove fear-based punishments, because punishments inflict pain. Pain initiates the defense. So fear-based punishments, or the perception of fear-based punishments, will often, quite often, if everything is working in alignment, it will elicit a defense. These defenses are adaptive, meaning they are there to help support you. Those are adaptive when they are in the presence of a threat. And they become maladaptive or unhelpful when we perceive them that the threat is not there. So we are going to break down the 4 common responses, our nervous system responses, which are the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response. And I found this helpful flow chart to help us visualize why this happens. It makes sense why this happens. So this is how the nervous system responds to trauma. It's adapted by Ruth Lanius, an MD and PhD. So they broke it down that if your brain asks the question, can I escape? If it is a yes, we will go into a flight response. If you can escape it, then we're going to go to flight. We're going to work to escape it. If it's a no, then we're going to ask, can I overpower it? If we can overpower it, we're going to say yes, and we're going to go into a fight response. We're going to fight whatever the threat is. If it's a no, then we're going to ask, will it lose interest in us? If it's a yes, then we're going to go to freeze. We're going to just totally freeze so that whatever the threat is loses interest in us. And if it is a no, then we default down to fawn, collapse. That is our brain working in alignment with what it is designed to do, which is to keep us alive. A lot of this work is out of our awareness. It's on the unconscious level. It happens in our downstairs brain. A reminder back down to the downstairs brain, our red zone is that reptilian brain asking, am I safe? Am I physically safe? When we perceive threats, it kicks us down. We start responding from that lower brain. When we don't feel safe, we start to go into those protective stances. After safety is established, then we can move up into processing within our limbic brain, our midbrain, asking, am I loved? That's where after physical safety is established, then we can start to go into emotional safety. After physical safety and emotional safety, then we can kick into our green brain, our executive brain, and ask the questions, what am I learning? A lot of this is done unconsciously and automatic. We do not choose it. So when we work to improve our parenting relationship, we are working to become the safe caregiver, the safe, soothing, secure caregiver for our child, so that we can actually help support them calming down and feeling safe, feeling loved. So then we can start asking and encouraging learning. When we are kicked into a stress response, there is physiological responses. That means things that we can witness, our nonverbal communications that are right in front of us, that are present. These are the same no matter what the response is. We're going to go through this each and every week. This little beginning intro into the responses will be the same each and every week, because I think it's that important to revisit it over and over and over again. So 9 physiological stress responses that we can observe, we can see in someone else, is their pupils dilate. Someone's pupils dilate to help them take in more light. It's their body kicking into that red brain, kicking into those nervous system responses saying, hey, we need to survive and we need to take in more light, so our pupils will dilate. Our hearing will become more tuned in and more focused. That's when we start to wait, let me listen for something, or wait, it's too quiet, right? We kick on, we're like, wait, we now have supersonic hearing. Our heart starts to beat faster because it's trying to pump oxygen and pump our blood so that we are primed to kick into that survival state. We begin mouth breathing. We start taking in oxygen faster so that we can, again, be prepared to launch into that survival. Our muscles tense, our stomach may flutter, and our digestion stops. All unnecessary bodily functions cease so that all of our body's resources can go to survival. Our mind might race, and our pain perceptions are reduced. That's when we start to hear about people lifting up cars. We have huge surges of cortisol and adrenaline where we can lift up a car and we're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I did that. Or once we hit initial pain, we may not even interpret the pain, because our system is overloaded and our pain perception is reduced until after it happens. And we're like, wow, that's really sore. I think about the time that I rolled my ankle during that running race on the trail. Initially, I started laughing because my pain perception was tuned out. I was like, oh my gosh, my system was overridden. And I started laughing. And it wasn't until I finally got into the car 15 minutes, 20 minutes later that I was like, wow, that really hurts. These are systems that happen outside of our awareness and outside of our control. It is our body doing what our body is meant to do, which is to keep us alive. So in today's episode, we are going to break down the fight response. Fight response is my primary response. It's the one that I feel most awareness in. And we're going to talk about how we use it to be adaptive, how it becomes maladaptive, what the behavior looks like. And we're also going to look at ways that you can act as gasoline in those situations, but you can also act as an extinguisher and a support. Fight types protect themselves from the threat through conflict. They perceive the threat and they're like, yep, I can overpower it. And I'm just going to go to overpower it. I don't need to run away. I don't need to walk away. I'm going to fight it. That's how a fight, someone with that fight response, aims to protect themselves through the perceived threat. In adaptive ways, this response to threats helps establish power over the threat. It helps protect while engaged in that conflict. We now shift up to like puff up and fight whatever it is that's in front of us because we feel like, okay, I can do this. I can fight you. I can survive this. I got this. We do this as a way to result in safety and security. So when I go into a fight response, it's because I'm looking to do those things. I'm looking to fight as a way to establish safety and security. On the flip side, it can be maladaptive as when I'm interpreting it in ways that are not traditionally life-threatening, and it becomes maladaptive as I start to become hyper-vigilant in quiet moments. Like I'm prepared for the fight. Like I'm always like, on guard. Someone who has a very quick fight response can also become quick to anger and reactivity. Like those are small things that just flip them and they just react in anger. And they can become defensive and sharp. I always say, like, my instinct is to ninja chop someone. And that's my fight response. When I'm perceiving a threat, I can go quick into fight. Brain break moment. All right, I know that I can go deep way fast. So let's just take a pause here to take a deep breath in and let it out. And listen while I let you know that this episode is brought to you by me, Megan, and my Positive Parenting Class Pass. Positive Parenting Class Pass are 6 simple positive parenting classes to kickstart your positive parenting journey. Those classes include Positive Parenting 101, which is a class that is just designed to give you the first steps in what positive parenting is and what it is not. Second class is Emotional Validation. In this class, we dig into how can we show up to have your child feel seen and heard in their lived experience. The third class is Setting Boundaries, all about communicating, enforcing, and allowing testing of your secure and consistent and firm boundaries. The fourth class is a class called Ending Entitlement. Inside of this class, we dig into how we are showing up using tools of entitlement and how we can start to release those tools and begin practicing tools of empowerment and choice. And we know that what we put down, they're going to pick up. The fifth class is a class all about natural consequences. This is a class that gets very clear and you'll walk away knowing what an imposed consequence is, what a logical consequence is, and most importantly, how to begin utilizing natural consequences so your children begin learning from their lived experience. And the final class is a class all about apologizing. I like to say that connection is the most skipped over step and recovery is the least utilized step. So in that step, you'll start to learn how to show up and use impactful and effective apologies so that your child knows that you see them and hear them and care about them. If you are looking to begin your journey today, then I highly encourage you go to bekindcoaching.com/classpass and dig into the classes starting today. As my free gift, you will receive Raising Respectful Kids, which is my 3-part video series all about how to stop focusing on adding on more decorations to your child and to you and to your relationship, and instead starting to reinforce and build a solid and secure foundation together. I can't wait to hear all of your amazing wins from the steps that you take inside of Positive Parenting ClassPass. All right, ready to get back to our episode? Before we get back, let's take one more deep breath together. And take a deep breath in and let it out. And let's go. Now, when we're tying in the behavior as communication, we're starting to say, okay, as someone who is engaged in a fight response, they are not cool, calm, collected. They're someone who is acting or misbehaving. What can this fight response behavior look like? And when we can start to interpret their behavior, not as someone who is being aggressive, but as someone who is stressed, we can start to look at this behavior that's in front of us, not as disobedience or being oppositional or defiant. We can start to say, hey, when this is happening, it's happening because they are feeling some sort of threat and stress. So this may look like talking back to authority, dominating people, being type A, having controlling tendencies, having to always have the last word. It also looks like explosive tempers. Someone who is engaged in this response, who is engaged in this stress response, may stomp out and slam doors. They're going to make big, loud expressions. Their behavior is going to communicate that they are pissed. They may start to be labeled as bossy or as a bully. This is where when I ran Kind Club in schools, Kind Club was to help give the bully tools, because the bully doesn't want to be the bully. A lot of anti-bully campaigns, I'm going to step on my little soapbox here. A lot of anti-bully campaigns is actually bully the bully. And we're trying to bully the bully into submission. We're trying to bully the bully to be nice. I'm going to tell you, it does not work. It does not work. If someone is being a quote unquote bully, it's because they are activated into a fight response, because they are interpreting a threat and they're feeling stressed. That is a person who needs tools, who needs support. It's white flags that are being waved saying, hey, I am overwhelmed. My lid is flipped. I don't need more punishments. I need help and support. I also think about this in response to adults and other people in my life, where they're engaging in what I want to call bully behavior. And now that I know this, now I'm like, oh gosh, they are stressed. Something is stressing them. They are interpreting a threat. Then that allows me to tap into my toolboxes of support. Someone who is also engaged in a fight response, their behavior may start to look like avoiding spaces of accountability. They're going to start missing appointments. They're going to start having excuses. They're going to start avoiding things as a way to protect themselves. Again, they protect themselves from the threat by avoiding those spaces of accountability. They may start to begin handling problems by themselves and blaming others for their own poor behavior. A fight response can also look like verbal aggression, yelling, screaming, using mean words, saying, I hate you. It is someone who is verbally assaulting or aggressing someone else. They are not doing that because they feel joy and calm. They're doing it because they're feeling stress and are interpreting threats. It also can be physical aggression, like hitting, biting, kicking, throwing things. It can also look like having to be right or having to have the right answer, being in these protective stances that I don't want to show up unless I'm right and have the right answer as a way to protect myself from the perceived threat. They also may begin to have a hard time admitting when they're wrong. They are also labeled as oppositional, defiant, or acting in ways that feel threatening to another person. Those are all behaviors that can start to clue in that the person is not doing it out of their best mind state. They're doing it, their behavior is communicating that they are in stress. They are engaged in defense. There is some sort of threat that they are perceiving. And it could be a real threat or it could be a perceived threat. In all of these responses, I want the message to be that they are not giving you a hard time. Someone who is acting like that is not wanting to act like that. They are having a hard time. They are struggling. And this is the time, this is the very moment that you can do your part. You can start to be present, attune, resonate, and build trust. This is the time where we kick in our tools to help support them in it. If you want to learn more about doing your part, I encourage you to check out episode 5.6. Are you listening to your child? That's where we break down, are you doing your part? And failure to do your part here ruptures trust, because what ends up happening is that we start to do things that act as gasoline. So when someone in front of us is being threatening, it's natural that then we're kicked into our defense, that we get kicked into our protective stances. That's where we start to become co-dysregulated, where instead there's an opportunity for the adult to help regulate ourselves and then the child in front of us. So moments that act like gasoline to someone who is in this stress state are quick movements, when we make dirty, fast movements where we take something away or we snatch something or we grab someone, that acts as gasoline. It will increase the response. The response will get louder and bigger. Another thing that acts as gasoline as us witnessing someone else is standing over someone. That's why I say the first thing is to give on or below eye level to a child who is having a difficult time. If you are safe, again, if there's no immediate physical safety, the first thing I do is get on or below eye level. I will go immediately drop down. It helps bring the intensity of everything down so that they don't feel more defense. And this is a biological defense. As someone who is standing over you, imagine if the same ratio applied, that if you were having a hard time and someone was standing up and over you with the same proportions to you as a child, that would be threatening, right? It'd be like a giant standing over me. I'd be like, whoa, I would just be naturally, again, shifted into more defense. So by softening everything, by getting down and getting on or below eye level, it helps lower. Again, not only am I softening my body, am I softening my postures, but I'm also going to start to soften my vocals, because loud vocals, yelling, harsh words, our tone of voice even, those loud vocals will again increase that stress response, increase that defense. Another thing that acts as gasoline is punishments. Again, punishment elicits fear. Fear elicits defense. Adding any sort of punishments or any sort of shame, blame, making someone feel worse or feel like they have to get even, when we shift into those revenge strategies, it will act as gasoline. It will make it very difficult for the person who is already struggling in front of us to lower and de-escalate themselves, getting back to that regulated state. Another thing is trying to get them to admit what they did. Oof, writing this one took me back to my own childhood, trying to get them to admit. I need you to admit. I need to hear your testimony. I need to hear you say the things that you did wrong. Ooh, that will act again to someone who is already engaged in a fight response. That will add more defense. The walls will get bigger, thicker, more electric, because they are feeling and perceiving that threat. Adding threats, verbal threats, if you don't do this or else, or do this or else, it will again kick us into that defense. And here, adding promises that you cannot keep. When someone is in a fight response, if you're doing something and saying something to try and get them to calm down, but you don't follow through on that, that fight response will hold on to that. They're going to log it. They're going to be like, nope, because the next time you make a promise, it's going to become an unsafe space for them. So instead, we can start to act in ways that are extinguishers, acting as ways not to act as gasoline, but to actually de-escalate and extinguish that response. Become the safe person. Show up in ways that create safety and the perceived understanding of safety. So this looks like creating physical safety, removing yourself, lowering your tone of voice, lowering your body postures, taking items that can be destroyed away, creating a physical, safe, and emotional safe space. doing the things to regulate your nervous system and showing up in ways that helps them regulate their nervous system, and finding strategies that solve your individual and work for your individual nervous system. There is no prescription here. It's finding ways that calm and soothe your own unique nervous system and ways that they can help soothe their unique nervous system. Offering connection, offering support, offering validation. I see you, I hear you. I understand your experience. I have compassion for your struggle. Another way to act as an extinguisher is to practice power with strategies. These are agreements, these are routines, these are child-led routines. This is not something, these are not tools of torture, but tools of inspiration, ways to bring everybody, to get everybody on the same page. This invites parents to stay out of fix it and rescue mode, stepping into how can we share power with the person in front of us to get on the same page, finding that win-win solution. Another de-escalation is to practice patience. Find the times when you're like, I'm about to lose it, and know that that's the exact moment to start practicing patience. Building social emotional skills. How do we bring in emotional awareness? How do we read and perceive someone else's behavior so that we can show up to help soothe them in that? And then ask for help and support. If you are losing it, then we're acting as gasoline and fire in an already stressful situation. And so if you're having a hard time being the extinguisher, that's a sign for you to say, hey, I need help and support here because this is hard. I've done everything I know to do. I need to learn and grow these skills. I hope this was helpful, just having an awareness around what fight responses look like and how we can start to see it in other moments of stress, how others are acting and engaged when they are feeling stress or perceive a stressful situation. I think when we start to have this awareness, then a lot of things start to make sense. It's like, oh yeah, I know that experience and it makes sense. It makes sense why this is happening. With a lot of hard, stressful situations, a lot of misbehavior is not happening because there's malintent. Oftentimes it's, again, that communication. It's telling us that something's flag, an alarm is going off, and we can start to attune and learn what that alarm says, means, and so that we can help support it in. So in closing, let's consider, these are the same questions as last week, and I'm going to keep them the same throughout all of them because we can ask these same questions with the new lens applied. So in closing, let's consider, when do you notice signs of stress? Have you noticed your own behavior in fight responses, or have you been around someone else who's engaged in a fight response? How about the inverse? Do you notice the signs of safety? Do you notice what helps you feel safe in those moments and what helps others feel safe in those moments? And then as you're considering those, what habits do you practice to help support your sense of safety or someone else's sense of safety? And then what habits support your sense of stress and others' sense of stress? Coming up next week, we are going to dig into the flight stress response. So I encourage you, if you want to come join live and stay for the Q&A after, I encourage you to find the Zoom room link posted in our Facebook community, Positive Parenting with Megan Ford. You can come join live. I asked members today who joined live, what would they say to someone who was wanting to join but wasn't sure? Heather says, it's okay, you don't need to have your video on. Shannon says, just come and listen, you can be a fly on the wall. Danny says, it's just a chat. And Chelsea says, do it, it could change your whole outlook on life. And Stephanie says, we want you here with us. I love it. I love helping people feel empowered and safe to step into this work. Speaking of work, if you've taken notes, if you've had any ahas, I would love to see them. I love to know your thoughts and takeaways. And so there's 3 ways to share. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You can share your thoughts and takeaways on social media and tag me. And you can share your thoughts inside our dedicated post inside our Facebook community, Positive Parenting with Megan Ford. If you've made it to this part, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for tuning in, for staying to the end. As I said before, my mission in life is to help support parents in feeling supported and empowered in doing this work. This podcast, my Facebook community, and my programs and book club all help parents work through the phases of awareness, education, and practice. If you are ready for the next step, I highly encourage you to check out Positive Parenting Class Pass, specifically the class on emotional validation and connection. Like I said, connection is always the first step, and connection helps us become that extinguisher to help soothe a stressed situation. Inside the class, you will learn how to balance your parenting toolbox by helping connect to your child in a way that helps them feel safe, seen, and heard. You can get started today at bekindcoaching.com/classpass. Friends, thank you for being here. Thank you for digging in. Thank you for holding the space. Thank you for being curious enough to take a listen, and I cannot wait until next week. Until then, bye, friends.